Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the feedback loop. This is Wednesday, the 10th of May. I wanted to talk about esports. I haven't talked about esports, and I had a couple of suggestions and comments and things along those lines, people wanting to get a few opinions on the esports scene itself. Now, I'm not what would be considered an esports enthusiast in much the same way that I'm not a sports enthusiast, although I would hazard to say that I'm much less of a sports enthusiast than I am esports because I play games. I play video games, and therefore, to me, it's much easier to follow. It's much easier to keep an eye on what games are out there, what games are popular. I'm always seeing all of these different stories about, you'll hear Overwatch and Dota and League, all of these different games, how well they're doing, when the big tournaments are, and all of that kind of stuff. And so if I'm at my computer, I might tune into one of those things. And we'll come back to that. That's actually something that I think is reasonably important. To start off with, one of the big problems that esports has is this general view that it's not real sports. And it's been something that has been kind of a battle for quite some time now. Trying to get that kind of legitimized attitude towards esports, enough that we can actually get some of the same protections and some of the same systems in place that regular sports have. Is it worthwhile to claim that playing video games professionally is sports? Like, is that of real value? Well, there are a lot of other sports that are officially recognized and have been for quite some time. Racing is a sport. Now, if you look at, the definitions of what a sport means, of course, there's a certain number of them that talk about the physical exertion. But they've started to move that definition in the direction of skill as well. It's not just physical exertion. There's also a high level of skill. So another game like curling, right? Curling is actually a very difficult game to do very well. And there are a lot of people that put curling up against football and say, well, of course it's not. But it is. It's a valid sport. And video games have a very difficult time in that genre, in that arena, because the traditional sports people, for some reason or other, don't want video games to encroach into that territory. They don't like it. Fine, whatever. But they would rather that it's not there as well. There are a lot of other games that have an incredibly high skill ceiling that you could classify as a sport. Chess is another one. There are all kinds of these sorts of hybrid of very high skill, but not necessarily, a bunch of brutish fools running down the field at one another. As you can tell, I'm probably not much of a football fan. Or boxing, let's beat each other up for a few minutes. You're not likely to get much in the way of positivity out of me for regular sports. I just never really did much as far as that goes for enjoyment. I was never very good at it. Of course, I'm not very good at video games either, as we all saw my Overwatch time. But really, what sports or what esports and sports overall have kind of diluted into is the idea that it is just a ton of people watching a very small number of people do something really, really well. That's what esports is. That's what regular sports really boils down to. And we've seen that start to bleed into regular mainstream media. ESPN3, I believe, has regular esports broadcasts. They actually had a broadcast on ESPN1 during the Super Bowl, because during the Super Bowl, ESPN1, nobody's watching that because they're off watching the Super Bowl. And all the people that are watching the Super Bowl are the ones who'd be pissed off that there was video games on their ESPN channel. So it was a perfect time for ESPN to do an esports broadcast. They've had an official Twitter account since, I think it was December 2015, ESPN has. And what's interesting to watch is how the market has started to shift and how esports are starting to take off in a pretty major way. If you take a look at something like the NBA championship in 2016, it was May, June, July, give or take. There was 31 million people that watched that championship. The last 10 minutes, it ramped up to about 44.5 million people that watched it. 6 months before that, there was the League of Legends World Championship in 2015, December. There were 36 million unique viewers watched that stream. But it peaked, concurrent peak, at 14 million. a little bit odd. And and this is one thing that I'm going to come back to because I think that it's actually very important. And it goes along with my own attitude of, if I'm at the computer, I'll watch something because I know that it's there. Now, that size discrepancy is starting to kind of even out. You're starting to see these massive numbers for these enormous tournaments, the Dota tournaments and League tournaments and things along those lines. And it's becoming more and more common. Now, it does tend to revolve around a few very core titles, but it is becoming more common, and it's an important thing to recognize. Now, the next thing that I want to do is I want to read off a quick comment here. Whitehawk from Discord had put into chat something about this topic for me, saying, quote, "Some games do have physical limits. Games like Brood War and I believe he's talking about Smash Brothers Melee have been notoriously hard on people's wrists, but that's something that's more modern, or something that more modern games have designed around. So without the same level of physical strain of traditional sports, we don't have a really good gauge for what the lifespan of an esports athlete is right now, which definitely will affect the narrative life cycle around players." And oddly, I don't know that I agree. I don't know that I agree that the lifespan is of concern. If you take a look at major league sports, okay, so you're looking at the NFL, NBA, MLB, and NHL. Football, what did I say? NBA, basketball, baseball, hockey. The NFL average football career is 3.5 years. In the NBA, it's a little bit under 5 years. Major League Baseball and NHL are about 5.5 years. I don't know that we're going to see that many players over and above that kind of normal average for what a professional athlete is tap out before the game does in a lot of cases. It does happen. I mean, obviously, you're going to have edge cases. You're going to have people that have been playing a game forever and people that are gone after 1 year. They had a really great tournament run and then they just absolutely wrecked their career. It didn't manage to last. But I find the idea of the amount of time, the lifespan of an esports career, really to not be all that different, or potentially not be all that different from your major league sports. And again, yeah, you've got your big names, your people that played forever, your Wayne Gretzky's and whatnot. I have no idea who that is in football, but in basketball, you're Michael Jordan. Take your pick. Right, you've got these people that have been around for a long time. They have a very long career. They're paid for a very long time. But some of the people get knocked out because of injury. Other people get knocked out because, you know what? Your contract expired. You're not really that good. So, see ya. Get off the roster. This happens all the time. And actually, this has been something that's been happening in esports as well. You see a lot of drama surrounding these different players. Right, players being kicked off of teams, or teams that are just screwing over their entire player base. The entire team gets screwed out of a contract or something along those lines. This is starting to be a big issue. And one of the problems that esports has is because it is such a new industry. Now, I don't know how long we'll be able to claim that it's a new industry, but it is for the moment. It's still something that we can call a very, very new thing. Because of that youngness, that naivete, we haven't established a lot of the business relationships that need to exist in a professional sports system. This is part of the problem. And one of the things that esports will be dealing with over the next probably 20 years, I would imagine. And as these different leagues start to officially set up and they start to regulate themselves and put in place rules, we're going to see a lot more of those players getting screwed over. You'll have all of these different lawyers that are now specializing in esports, right? They're specializing in dealing with the contracts needed for a player to play on a team professionally for a period of time, however long. A lot of those players right now are under contracts that are either totally unenforceable or are so skewed in the direction of the team franchise owner that the player really doesn't have a lot going for them. It's really actually quite sad because all of these people, just like in real sports, they're coming out of high school, maybe some of them still in high school, and they're going in. We've got all these different college level tournaments and university level tournaments that are starting to be advertised. They're young kids. They don't know anything about contract law. They don't know anything about what their rights are. They have no idea how to negotiate, how to get the best deal for themselves. And that's going to be a very major problem. And that's part of what gets that lifetime career, that longer career time, is being able to negotiate a good contract. Now, obviously, Whitehawk was talking as well about the idea of games kind of being designed around the different physical ailments that a person might have. And you have the same thing that happens in sports as well, right? That's what knee pads are. That's what, you know, the compression socks and the shoulder pads and the helmets and all that kind of stuff. These are just things to try and reduce injury, right? In the place of video games, the idea of something that perhaps is you've got your wrist rest, or you've got something that forces you to do a little bit more elbow movement instead of just wrist or whatnot. You know, there's a lot of different ways you can try and reduce that injury. But I've been using mouse and keyboard forever. I have yet in my lifetime, and I'm 36 now, so as I mentioned in one of the earlier videos, I am a terribly, terribly old man. I have yet to actually run into computer issues or wrist strain issues. And I play video games just about every day, and I work in an office, so I'm always using the mouse. Now, not to say that I'm any different than anybody else, but this is how things go. So to move on in the comments, I had a comment that was actually parroted almost pretty exact twice. And I want to mention both folks that did it and read off what they had here. Hypergrip, who is the king of walls of text on Discord, quote, "A very curious aspect of esports compared to traditional sports is the life cycle or shelf life, or however you want to call it. There are a few core esport titles that have established a competitive community beyond the phase after release. So CSGO, Dota 2, League of Legends, Smash Brothers. In traditional sports, people are often fans of one specific game for most of their life, a game with rules that barely change every decade, and if they do, not fundamentally. Esports, on the other hand, essentially presents the fans with fresh iterations of, or sometimes completely new mechanics and rules. This is entirely true. It's absolutely true. You take a look at the rules changes in something like the NHL. 1983, they added the 5-minute sudden death overtime. And then it wasn't until 1991 that they added another rule change. I don't remember what the rule change was, but there was like that. That's how long of an iteration cycle there is in these major league sports. In video games, we're going to take Street Fighter 4 and we're just going to throw that one in the bin, and we're going to have Street Fighter 5, and that's what we want everybody to play, because the way that we make money is off of the sales of the game. That's how we make our money. Well, you'll notice a difference here. And this difference is actually one of the core pieces of this whole puzzle. Nicolay Manny on YouTube, quote, "I always wondered about one problem about esports compared to regular sports, and that is the games come and go. The audience playing and watching them come and go as well. Some of the regular sports existed for over 100 years, football, tennis, not to mention Olympian athletics, and they barely changed since then, but the games that are part of the esports scene change constantly." Absolutely correct. The business model is totally different. And this is one of the problems that esports is going to have to adjust to. And I actually think that Valve has done a really good job with this. This is an important piece. So the NHL, NBA, NFL, Major League Baseball, all of these different groups operate based on ticket sales for events. They operate based on advertising at events, and they operate based on merchandise sales. Okay, that's the key. That's what has kept all of these businesses alive over decades and decades and decades and decades. Okay, no video game is doing that. None are doing that. Yeah, you've got a little bit of merch with Overwatch. Yeah, you've got a little bit of advertiser revenue that's occurring on Twitch and things along those lines. Okay, but none of them have actually matched the business model of the traditional sports outlets. All of these games, all of these esports rely on people buying the game. Dota 2 and League of Legends exceptions because they're free to play. But all of the other games, and free to play is a maybe a light way to put it, because there's a lot of money in those games. Yeah, they're free to play initially, but people are buying shit, so it's not really free. All of these games bring in money because of the game itself. People paying to play the game. It's not so much the issue with the traditional sports. Right? Anybody can just go play hockey. Not anybody can just go play Dota. Bad example. Overwatch. Let's use that one instead. The business model is one of those things that is going to cause a bit of a problem as they start to go forward. And it's been interesting watching what Blizzard has been trying to do with Overwatch. The Overwatch League was something that they announced at BlizzCon last year, I think. And actually a friend of mine who's much better off with the cash than I even sent an email into Blizzard asking for more information. He said he sent it to me, but I haven't yet seen it. It turns out that they're having a little bit of trouble. Let me hop over to another screen here really quick. So the Overwatch League, the idea behind this was that it was going to be, like traditional sports. Okay, it was all about the traditional sports. They were going to create their own league that is based on cities. Okay, and so different companies could actually buy a city. They could pay the transaction fee or the franchise fee, and they would have that city. They would have the team for that city, right? So the Edmonton Oilers, hockey team in my city. You could have the Edmonton Rednecks, an Overwatch team, if you want to pay the money to do it. For some reason, my screen is causing me issues. But there was an article that went up on ESPN today that apparently they're having a really, really difficult time finding people to buy these teams, to buy these franchises. Why do you suppose that is? Well, it turns out that the buy-in for an Overwatch franchise is $20 million. That's how much it costs to be the exclusive team owner in a particular city. And it gets worse. Teams are not actually guaranteed a revenue share until 2021, after 2021. And Blizzard also has to meet a couple of other criteria that nobody told ESPN what that is yet. And then, and it gets worse. If you decide you want to sell your team later to somebody else, the league is going to take 25% of your proceeds. Now, normally proceeds of sale is the net afterwards. So if you paid $20 million to buy in, you're going to sell it for maybe $25 million. The $5 million is the proceeds. But even still, what they've got here is they've got a huge number of limitations. Okay, limitations getting in the way of people setting up these professional teams. Now, they're looking for a high bar to entry. Like that's on purpose. Don't mistake this. What they're looking for is they want somebody to set up a professional team in that city, just like you would for hockey or something along those lines. If you take a look at the NHL, the current rate, I do believe, is somewhere in the area, my notes off screen, the current rate is somewhere in the area of $500 million to set up a new NHL hockey team. So a few fewer people, no big deal. And you've got yourself a $20 million Overwatch team. Does anybody else think that Blizzard may have been overreaching here a little bit with their Overwatch League? Assuming that you're going to have the success of Major League sports is pretty brazen. It's really, really brazen. And I find it difficult to understand where they thought this was going to go. At that rate, at that level, rather than maybe having a much smaller range to start off with. We're only going to have a couple of major cities. We're going to set up maybe 10 teams, right? Start slow, start small, just like the other variety of sports did, right? They all started small. They all had a smaller number of teams. It's a little bit of a problem. And I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised they're having a hard time finding teams because, quite frankly, Overwatch is a forced esport. It's not an organic one. League of Legends was an organic one. StarCraft 1 was an organic esport. The old Street Fighter games, Smash Brothers. These were organic esports. There were so many people that wanted to watch the pros play that they just flowed into it. Right? Overwatch is a manufactured esport. Now, it's a great game. Don't get me wrong. They have done an excellent job with the polish and a reasonably excellent job with the balancing and whatnot. But it's a forced esport. They're pushing this hard. They're putting a huge amount of money in, and that's why they need to charge $20 million as a franchise fee to set up your own team. They need to make their money back, and they can't give you a revenue share until 2021 if you're buying in now, because it's going to cost a lot of money to set up the infrastructure to run the tournaments and run the off-season games and run all of these different things that you would do in a league. They need the financing to do that, and they're not willing to take it out of their $1 billion that they made from Overwatch, apparently. Or Activision won't let them. You never know. But I want to come back to a point that I made right at the beginning, and that was that I sit down and I'll watch esports. I don't watch it because I seek it out. If I'm at my computer and I happen to be aware that there's a tournament going on, I might watch it. You know, a little bit of Rocket League, that'd be brilliant. A little bit of Street Fighter, sure, why not? Smash Brothers, absolutely. Dota, don't have a clue what's going on, and I've played Dota, but I'll still watch it. I'll still watch it. But I only watch it because I'm already sitting at my computer. Let me bring you back to those couple of stats that I read off right at the beginning of this whole piece. 31 million people watched the 2016 NBA Championship. The last 10 minutes, it ballooned up to 44.5 million people. Okay, that's their concurrence. 6 months before that, League of Legends World Championship had 36 million unique viewers, but the peak concurrent was 14 million people. That's a lot of people tuning in and leaving. And this was for the championship game. This is not the entire tournament. This is just the final game, the finals. That's a lot of people that are kind of watching. They watch for a bit and then they leave. Or they miss the beginning and they watch a little bit. This is one of the things that is a little bit different about esports, is that the scheduling of it, the people that are watching, I don't believe that they're watching for the same reasons that people who watch the NFL do. I don't think they're watching for the same reason at all. I don't think there is any of that home team pride. I don't think there's any of that over the top, we won, we won. No, you didn't win. They won, you watched. And that's what esports really is. That's what it comes down to. It's just people watching other people play a game. Yeah, there's a little bit of team cheering and whatnot, where maybe you've got the American team and you're going to cheer the American team because you're from America, right? Or the Korean team if you're from Korea. That makes a great deal of sense. That's the regions that they've got so far. But to think that somebody is going to cheer for the team from San Francisco because they're in San Francisco and that matters to them, I don't know. I think that's an overreach. I think that's a little bit over the top. Right? We're seeing with these numbers talking about 36 million unique viewers tuning in to the League of Legends Championship, and only 14 million are concurrent, is their concurrent cap. That's a lot of people that are accidentally watching from the front page of Twitch. That's an awful lot of people that are watching a little bit before they get into one of their own games, and then they go play the game that they were actually there for, instead of watching the thing that they were just kind of keeping an eye on. Esports fans don't seem to be nearly as committed as real sports fans. And if I was to pick out the primary difference between real sports and esports, it's the fandom. The fans have to be absolutely rabid. They have to watch every game. They have to be that kind of people. And I don't think they are. It's going to take some time before they actually get to that point. I'm also not convinced that Overwatch is going to be a successful esport. I think there's a good possibility they're going to spend a ridiculous amount of money, discover that this shit doesn't work, and then they're going to have to walk back on it. But I'm not entirely sure. So that's what I wanted to talk about with regard to esports. I hope it was educational or useful in some way. As I said, I am kind of an esports watcher. I watch from time to time. I think I'm probably representative of more of the majority of people that watch. We watch a little bit here and there. We enjoy it. I don't really care what team plays or what team wins. I just want to see people that are pros do awesome stuff in a video game. That's why I watch. I want to see them do amazing things that I could never do in a million years. Very impressive to me. This has been the Feedback Loop, talking about esports. Please feel free down in the comments to suggest topics for the next time around. I love trying to work in some different topics from people, different ideas, different concepts that we can kind of go over. It's a lot of fun. So please toss that down below, or in the Twitter feed, at Gnomecast on Twitter is where you can find me there. YouTube comments, over on Discord, there'll be a link in the description. All the usual social media, blah, 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 blah. Right? Right. Cheers. I'll see you for the next one. Bye-bye.